Howdy howdy, Suitable here, and welcome to my analysis of the Dwarf Miner Infantry Unit. Now, as with all of my analysis videos, I go into great detail and understand details not interesting to everyone. I will try and put a summary at the very end of the video to go over my findings and suggestions. For those of you who do love the analysis, buckle in. I'm going to go in quite in depth and trying to be rather thorough in this analysis of the Dwarf Miners. I have, basically I decided to go through and do a proper analysis of Dwarf Miners after my Improving Total Warhammer video, Dwarf Units. I had a comment on saying, because I said, well, I think they need to improve the Dwarf Miners, and had a comment saying, well, they are just chaff. I mean, that is true, and that's a valid comment. They are the dwarf version of a chaff unit, I suppose. But I had done a lot of analysis before, and I understand kind of the weaknesses of the Dwarf Miners, and I really wanted to quantify that so it makes it very clear where they stand up against other infantry, and where they're useful, where they're not, and how much they're actually worth, and make it really, really clear. Now, there's a few things I'm going to presuppose, some ideas that I work off of that make my opinion what it is, and you can agree or disagree, but this is just how I think. First of all, when it comes to dwarf units, and particularly infantry units, I really believe that dwarf units have to be above and beyond all of their peers in Total Warhammer, for the very, very specific reason that dwarfs don't have cavalry, don't have a lot of mobility, and don't have magic, don't have a lot of buffs, don't have healing, don't have faction-wide buffs. Like some factions, like Tomb Kings, get healing just as a part of their faction. Some factions, like High Elves, get martial prowess, where they have extra stats. A lot of units like the Beastmen get frenzy, where they have extra stats, and etc., etc. So the Dawi infantry unit, just pound for pound, just unit to unit, has to be better than their peers in general, and they have to all perform a function. And the Dwarf Miner, on top of that, I really believe the Miner is an iconic symbol for dwarfs, and it doesn't, not just Total War Warhammer, but for all dwarf lore. Whether you're talking Tolkien or D&D or anything else like that, mining is something that is always linked with dwarfs, and I think the Dwarf Miner should be a unit that dwarf players want to bring, that are interesting to play, that really have a place in dwarf builds, because they are so iconic, and they do symbolize dwarfs as a whole in many very important ways. So with that basic idea, or that premise, that the dwarf infantry really has to be better pound for pound in just a straight up fight with no magic and no things involved, and because the Dawi don't have a lot of mobility and don't have cavalry specifically, and dwarfs don't have monstrous units like many others do, and there's and magic and healing and all these things, I think the dwarf units have to be simply better tier for tier. So we're going to actually go through and do a deep analysis of the miners, and we'll get into the main screen and start going. So buckle up your seatbelt. It's going to be a long video. It's a very thorough analysis, and I have tried to up my game a little bit. I've gone from doing 5 tests per unit to 7 tests per unit. It is kind of a statistically significant number, so hope you like it. Now, the way I'm going to do this is I want to consider what miners are, what they should be. I do want to separate miners and miners with blasting charges, because they are quite different. Miners with blasting charges are probably correctly valued. Blasting charges are very, very strong, but I also want to look at what you can do with your miners after their blasting charges have been used, or what you can do to at least maximize the use of your miners in a build. So I guess the first thing I want to go over is that miners are an incredibly unique unit. They are the highest armor unit at their price. Like at 325, there's nothing else that even comes close to having 80 armor. They are also the lowest cost armor piercing unit in the game by a mile. You really don't see armor piercing units up until the 500 or 600 gold level in general, and you really don't see good armor piercing units until up above 750 to 1000 gold. That's where you see the really good armor piercing units, and that's where you also see the really well armored units in general. So they're a very unique unit in that sense. They do have Vanguard deployment, but that is meant to pay homage to their tabletop ability, where they can tunnel underground and pop up pretty much anywhere on the field of battle, which is one of the abilities I think they should have. But I'm going to go over possible changes at some point to where I think the miners should be. So they are a really unique unit, but they just don't perform on the battlefield. So I will at the end do some testing on miners with blasting charges to show how they can be used more effectively. But I wanted to first compare miners to all similarly priced units kind of in their price range around 325, 350, 300, and just see where they stack up in their area of cost. And I also I'll do some testing later on where I wanted to compare them to units they should pull value against. For example, a high armored unit with low melee attack, or a high armored unit with low armor piercing, is a unit that the miners should be able to pull value on. So the first units I went up against are the Skeleton Warriors. They're also 325. I actually made sure that their faction heal doesn't proc, because I just wanted to make it basically a straight up stat fight to see how the Dwarf Miners would do against them. So we're going to go in and do a quick fight, and then I will go to the stats for each one. So let me see, we got this all set up right. Okay, so we'll hop in there, and I did all most of my testing on Glacial Lake. I actually have some extra testing, some little bonus testing on a hill to see how powerful the hill advantage was, and eventually against skinks to see how powerful their aquatic trait was. So basically this is how I set up my fights. I wanted them to be all standard, all the same, something that I could watch. You can see the Skeleton Warriors have a stat advantage in melee defense of +4. They have 22 melee defense, where the miners have 20 or 18, and they have a stat advantage on weapon strength. The miners have a big stat advantage on armor, where they have 70 plus armor. But you can see the Skeleton Warriors without their faction heal do pretty well against the miners, actually, even though they don't have armor piercing. And when we get to the stat point, or the stat page, I'll show you exactly how that landed up, and I'll show you how I valued the differential between them. But the miners lose pretty handily to the Skeleton Warriors. So, the losses are the same, 50 and 50, but the Skeleton Warriors have a lot more units a lot more individuals per unit at 120 versus 75. So we'll continue that. So I'll just pop over to the spreadsheet, and we'll take a look. I did 7 tests instead of 5. Again, I wanted to have a little bit more data. So what I do for my testing is I look at the start of the fight and the end of the fight, so I can get a battle time. Then I look at the starting hit points and finishing hit points of each fight for both units, and I calculate a damage per second, or DPS, and then I compare the end hit points of each unit to the start hit points, and do a ratio on their gold cost, and find out what the gold differential is. How much gold value did the unit win or lose? and I also just look at a gold per minute and the win-loss ratio. So against the Tomb King skeletons with no faction heal, that's no healing, no nothing, they lost all 7 fights, and pretty handily. You know, the miners finished with 17% of their hit points, the skeleton warriors finished with 45. And I took this gold differential, the average, minus 89 gold, and then I subtracted it from the miner's original cost to give an approximate corrected miner value. So in this encounter, I'm not looking at gold per minute or the losses. It is important, but just as a rough calculation, the miners are worth about 236 gold. If the miners had cost 236 gold instead of 325, this gold differential would be 0. So really that's how I went ahead and looked at that. So the next unit we looked at are clan rats. So we'll just head into here, grab some Skaven, and look at some clan rats. So clan rats are also a value of 325. So we'll get in there and fight. Now, Skaven actually have a number of things they can do to push an infantry fight their way. Clan rats are a chaff unit. They're expendable. They're a meat shield, but they do have this scurry away if they're running, and strengthen numbers if their hit points are above their base. So we'll just pop our miners over there and start that fight. And it's always the case in this. Miners actually have a very low model count, and all the other units they face at their tier are generally a higher model count. I don't think there is a single one with the same model count per unit as miners. So here you can see the clan rats are easily winning. They have a lot more stats, like 8 extra melee defense, 6 extra melee attack, 4 charge bonus, 4 weapon strength, and this proc here, strength in numbers, is actually quite good because it lasts until they're at half health, and you can see they're just beating the brakes off our miners. They're over half health still. They still have their proc going, and that's the end of the battle. So we'll end that battle and go take a look at what the stats showed us on their value. So we go over here, and the clan rats really beat the brakes off the miners. They have significantly more DPS than the skeleton warriors because of that faction ability, and miners of course lost every one, but really they pulled 131 gold out of that engagement. So the approximate value, corrected value of the miners in this engagement is only 194 gold. So we'll head to the next one, which is men-at-arms with shields. So that's Bretonnia. So we'll head over here, take a look at Bretonnia, and we have here at 325 the same exact value of the miners are the men-at-arms with shields. So we'll get in there and fight that battle. Now Bretonnia doesn't actually have like faction abilities per se. The men-at-arms are just a straight up it's just a straight up stat fight, because you can see the men-at-arms, they don't have any abilities. They can just hide in the forest. So we'll start that fight, and so it really is just a straight up stat fight of 2 equally costed units. And the men-at-arms though have a very significant stat advantage. They have +9 melee attack, +16 melee defense. They have -50 armor, but their weapon strength +4, charge bonus +4. It really, the armor of the miners just doesn't seem to come into play. You would think it would make it very difficult for low tier units with no armor piercing to chew through them, but that just doesn't seem to be the case. The armor does not make up for the lack of stats, not even close. And these men-at-arms, again, no extra abilities, no extra nothing, no faction abilities, are just beating the brakes off our miners quite badly. And they've been winning that fight for a long time. Now, they don't have a good leadership, but when they're winning the fight, that leadership doesn't seem to matter. So we'll end that battle, and we'll go take a look at the stats we found in that fight. So when we come down, the shielded men-at-arms, Again, they won all 7 fights, and they beat them almost as badly as the Clan Rats, pulled 123 gold out of that, giving the miners an approximate corrected value of 201 gold. So they just crushed our miners. So these are I think these are the only 3 equally costed units in the game at 325 gold. So I thought I would start to look at other units that are maybe around that price. So I wanted to look at the vampire version of Skeleton Warriors, because they are a little bit cheaper. So the vampire counts here, their Skeleton Warriors are worth 300 as opposed to 325 with the Tomb Kings, and they don't have a faction heal, etc., etc. Of course, the vampire counts do have, regeneration magic and healing magic and everything else like that, but this is, again, just a straight up stat fight. I don't want to include the other good little goodies that other factions do have. As much as I can, I want to not include that. So when we go and fight the Skeleton Warriors, who are 300 gold as opposed to 325, again, Skeleton Warriors have +4 melee defense and +4 weapon strength. Charge bonus is the same. They have way less armor and actually way less leadership, but you can see they're winning that fight. And when you're winning a fight, that winning is giving you +3 to your leadership, and it'll go up to +6. But this is not as convincing a fight as the Tomb Kings version, or the other two. But these Skeleton Warriors do only cost 300 gold as opposed to the 325 of the miners. But you can see that it's much closer, but they are winning that fight, and that winning that fight does matter when it comes to them not crumbling. You know, they're critical binding, damage sustained, but they're not crumbling at this point, and they are able to beat the miners. So we'll go and take a look at what the final stats show us. Alright, let's flip over here, and the approximate, so in that fight, I ran it 7 times. The miners lost every time. They didn't pull nearly as much gold as the Tomb Kings version, but they still pulled basically 76 gold, giving our miners an approximate corrected value of 249 gold in this situation. And they won all 7, and they're a unit that costs less. And of course, we know vampires have regeneration, healing, lots of good things. Not that they would use an Invocation of Nehek on Skeleton Warriors unless they happen to be in a AoE effect spell. So that we'll send them up against Goblins. Goblins are, really are truly an expendable unit. They are one of the lowest cost units. They have poor leadership, expendable. So you would think our miners would be able to do pretty good against them. They're meant to be a true throwaway unit because of that expendable trait, but let's go see how that fight goes. And they're shorter than our miners, which I kind of like, because there's not too many units that are. Alright, so we'll get them into the fight and see how we can do up against these Goblins. Just basic chaff spear infantry, and you can see the Goblins are winning that fight off the get. Goblins have +8 melee defense, +2 melee attack, -55 armor, +2 charge bonus, +3 weapon strength. So again, they're winning that fight. Not handily, but they're definitely winning it. You can see they've got the green cross on there, and that's not using anything like Wah or Itchy Nuisance or all the good things that you can use with Goblins. They don't have any other stats down here that are affecting the fight. They're just straight up beating up our miners here, and pretty badly for a unit that costs less, only 300, and has the expendable trait. Both exhausted, and so the armor just doesn't seem to be valuable enough to make the miners compete at this level, which you think it would, because that's 80 armor is a lot of armor. So we lose to the Goblins. Let's go see what the stats did if we were able to pick off or win any of those 7 fights that I tested with. So I'll go down, and the answer is no. We lost all of them. And the Goblins pulled more value than the Skeleton Warriors at 102. The approximate corrected value of the Miners is 223. And the Goblins generally finished with 38% of the hit points, did 21 DPS. Our Miners only did 17 to them, but it just wasn't enough. So they lose straight up to Goblins, and it's not even close. So let's take a look. The next unit I thought, well, maybe I'll look at Empire Spearmen, because Miners do have armor piercing and armor. They're meant to be a unique unit. They have Vanguard deployment. What if we went up against a unit that was specifically meant for something else, not an infantry engagement? These Spearmen are anti-large. They have charged defense against large foes. You frequently see Spearmen on the battlefield. They only cost 300. Really, this is somewhere where our Miners should excel, I would think, because to get that anti-large, they have an anti-large bonus of 13, which is pretty big. And the charge defense against large, you have to give something up, right? So these Spearmen are cheaper than our Miners. They have anti-large weapon damage and charge defense against large, so the fight should be a much better engagement for our Miners, because those Spearmen do have to give up something to get those stats, theoretically. So send them into that fight. And again, they're at a 90 model counts compared to our 75. And again, at least it's closer. You can see they don't have the green crosses. Well, now they do. So they're going to start winning that fight, but it seems like it's a little closer, but our Miners are definitely losing. I mean, this is kind of a battle of the wet. All of these are battle of the wet noodles. I mean, they don't kill each other very fast. But you can see now our Miners know they're losing, and they're taking a morale hit for that, and the Spearmen are handily winning. Now they're handily winning because they're winning current combat. They're getting 6 leadership from that, and this is something that I wouldn't expect. I would think the Miners costing more, and these Spearmen having the anti-large trait and charge defense against large would be a little weaker to an infantry engagement, but not against our Miners. Our Miners seem to be losing that handily enough. So, and now once they both get exhausted, once you're exhausted, your armor really doesn't, you only make use of 65% of your armor, so it becomes less and less valuable as you get more and more tired. So sure enough, the Spearmen are going to win that fight. So we'll go to the spreadsheet and see if we were able to take any fights off the Spearmen. And the answer is no. Spearmen won all 7. There was one that was a little closer, 17-16. But they took 107 gold off that engagement, so the corrected miner value is about 218, so pretty low actually. And remember, like, dwarf infantry has to be good. There is no inexpensive anti-large options for the dwarfs. No cavalry, no monsters, no nothing. So the dwarf infantry does have to be good, in my opinion. So the Empire Spearmen just beat them up. Straight up. So I thought, let's try and lower the bar a bit. So we'll go up against just plain men-at-arms. So we go to Bretonia, and I'll just pick men-at-arms. They're only worth 250 as opposed to our Miners at 325. So I thought this should be a good place to test to see if our Miners can win that fight against the men-at-arms, because that's a very, very inexpensive unit at 250. According to the math that we have right now, the Miners are worth around 225, 250, somewhere in there, so this should be a pretty close fight. And but we'll see. That's why we do the testing. So these are just straight men-at-arms. They're worth 250 gold, and they're fighting our Miners. So they do have more stats. They have plus 9 melee attack, plus 8 melee defense, plus 4 weapon strength, plus 4 charge bonus, but minus 50 on the armor, and minus 18 on the leadership. So they do have very low leadership, but you can see they're already winning here. which is surprising. These men-at-arms only cost 250. They're very inexpensive. And again, they don't have anything special going for them. No special faction traits or anything. It's just a straight up, they're just straight up winning at this point. But it is close, fortunately. But at a cost of 250 gold versus 325 gold, this is not the result that we want, and definitely not the result that we're looking for. So, I mean, I was a little bit disappointed here that we can't beat them, but you know, let's just go take a look. Maybe we could take a few rounds out of them, win some of those. So head over to the spreadsheet, and the answer is no. We lost all 7 fights against men-at-arms at 250 gold. And I mean, they beat the snot out of us. And the gold differential they took out of us was 141. So the miners' the corrected value is, in this case, is only 184 gold. So if our miners didn't cost 325 and only 184 gold, it would be a fair trade for gold. So I thought to myself, can we beat anyone? I was a little bit dejected. I mean, I knew I'd done some testing before, but never a real strong analysis. So I thought, please, can we beat Skaven slaves? 125 gold versus our 325 gold. They literally have 0 armor. Here we have proud Dowie miners with fine dwarven armor that wield pickaxes that can literally cut through stone and cut holes in the earth itself. Please, please let my miners be able to beat Skaven slaves. I was like, they've got to be able to beat Skaven slaves, don't they? You know, Skaven slaves are only 125. You can get 3 of them just about for 1 miner. So here we go. Deep breath. Can we beat Skaven slaves? Well, Skaven slaves have -6 melee attack, +2 melee defense, -4 weapon strength, and -1 charge bonus. We should win. And fortunately, we definitely are winning that right now. It's going back down, but we're winning that engagement, it looks like. But it's close. For sure, they're taking some health off our miners, but we're beating them. We're beating them slaves. But this is such a massive value difference. Like, these slaves are only worth 125 gold. Our miners are worth 325. You would think that they would just be able to beat the tar out of these Skaven slaves, but you know, yeah, it's not too bad. Actually, it kind of is bad, but at least they beat them. I don't have to fill an entire book of grudges against CA explaining being angry because miners can't beat Skaven slaves. But it's close, right? It lasts for a long time. So we'll quit that battle, and we'll go and take a look at what the stats tell us after that fight. They killed 31 of our miners for 125 gold. So what do those stats look like? Well, we won all of them, but they still pulled 100 gold off us. You know, our miners finished with 42% of their health. The slaves finished with 29. So the approximate corrected miner value is 227. Not great, but at least we beat someone. So I wanted to continue testing and to be very thorough. So I wanted to look at Ungor Spearmen. And I first looked at the version with shields because Ungors were actually nerfed in the last patch pretty significantly. So we'll take a look at Ungor Spearmen with shields. I know they were nerfed. They are worth a little bit more than our miners, but can our miners at least pull value against a unit that has been recently nerfed? You know, maybe these Ungor Spearmen were really valuable. I think they lost some melee attack charge bonus. I'm not really sure exactly what they did, but let's get into that fight. Now, Spearmen again. They're anti-large, shielded, have charge defense against large. They have poor leadership, but they have this Primal Fury, which gives them 8% charge bonus, plus 5 melee attack, and immune to psychology. All these abilities, and they only cost 25 more than our miners. You'd think you'd have to give something up to get that, and I suppose against other units you do, but they're beating the brakes off our miners again. You know, they have plus 7 melee attack, plus 12 melee defense. They have the same weapon strength to make up for that charge defense against large, but they're taking it to us. You get a whole lot with those Ungor Spearmen with shields for 350 gold, because they do have definite uses, being anti-large and having a charge defense against large, and being shielded for that matter. So they definitely lose. So how do the stats play out in this case? Alright, well, lost everyone. They didn't take as much gold off as 75, but they give us an approximate value of our miners of 250 gold. So I thought I'd keep testing. Let's just look at the regular Ungor Spearmen. They only cost 300. I would expect that they're not as good as the Alright, we're back. Had a bit of a crash, which is very rare for this game, but I was alt-tabbing a lot, so maybe that's why it happened. Anyways, now we looked at the Ungor Spearmen with shields at 350, and we lost pretty handily to them, but not seemingly as bad. We're going to just take a look at the basic Ungor Spear Herd. Again, they're cheaper than the Dwarf Miners. They're anti-large, charge defense against large foes, expendable. They do have a Primal Fury as well, which is plus 8 charge bonus, plus 5 melee attack, and plus 12% speed, and immune to psychology. So let's go and take a look and see how our miners do against the Ungor Spearmen Herd. And again, these guys were nerfed in the Tomb King's patch, so I would expect, and we did much better, well, we did better against the Shielded Virgin, so let's take a look at how we do against these guys. Alright, that battle going. And stat-wise, they have plus 7 melee attack, plus 4 melee defense, and plus 5 charge bonus. Minus 65 armor. Looks much closer. There's no one who's green yet, who's winning the battle, obviously. Now they're just flickering onto green a bit, the Ungor Spear Herd, but this looks quite close, I would say. Yeah, it looks fairly close, although the Ungor Spear Herd are now winning slightly. So, and again, this is a unit that's cheaper than our Dwarf Miners, and they have a lot of extra stats. We should see if their leadership goes down and they lose their Primal Fury, that our miners might be able to come back. And there they go. They have no more Primal Fury. They only have plus 2 melee attack and plus 4 melee defense. They are still winning, but it is pretty close. Looks like they're getting ready to break, and we're getting ready to break. I don't think we're going to win this, but it's very close in general. Much better. Oh, we did win. We did win that. Okay, so let's exit that battle. Okay, so we get down to our Ungor Spearmen. In this matchup, we actually ended up winning 3 out of 7, so 43%. Much closer. We are still losing value, which brings our miners' approximate value against the Ungor Spearmen to 282 gold. But that nerf is definitely showing in here compared to the Empire Spearmen, who did much better. And we'll go and continue our testing. Alright. So, actually, the next unit I wanted to test against was the Skink Cohort. I just wanted to be thorough, make sure I got everybody. And the Skink Cohort
is at 300 gold, and they do have this aquatic trait. So I am going to do some testing in the water as well. But we'll just go and fight this battle, and then we'll go look at the stats, and then we'll also go look at how they do in the water as well, just out of curiosity. You don't have a lot of maps where you can get a fight in water, so I'm not sure how much that value, how much that aquatic trait, how much value that aquatic trait has for these Skink Cohorts. But they have 30 armor, plus 6 melee defense, plus 2 melee attack. They don't have any other special abilities except for the aquatic trait. You can see they're kind of going back and forth between winning slightly and combat even. And they do have, where the Dwarf Miners have 75 models, the Skink Cohorts have 120 models. But it is definitely very close, is what it looks like to me. And although the Skink Cohorts are winning by a little bit, it's very, very close in overall health, and they've got 30 kills, we have 48. Yeah, this is a pretty close matchup. Skink Cohorts, again, are cheaper than our miners. We'll see how this ends up. See, it looks like we're going to win here, actually. Well, maybe not. Even though it shows them winning slightly, maybe those Skink Cohorts will pull it out. It's hard to say. Yeah, it looks like they're gonna. Yeah, they're gonna get us for sure here. But it's, again, pretty close. We're in that battle. And go take a look at the stats. So the Skink Cohorts, so it's not common for them to beat the miners. Out of 7 battles, the Skink Cohorts only won 1. The miners won 6 of them, so 85% of the time. But the Skink Cohorts still pulled value, 34 gold in that engagement with our miners, which would give the approximate corrected miner value of about 291. Now I'm going to go and look at how the Skink Cohorts fare in aquatic, and I'll do a test again, just some extra testing on a hill, because was kind of curious while I was here of how much of a difference that would make. So we'll go to Imara Swamps, or Imara Swamps, and we'll fight that again. So Skink Cohorts barely won, but in our 7 test battles they only won once, lost 6 times to the miners, but they pulled value on the miners for sure. So let's see what happens when we fight these Skink Cohorts in water. Because not only does water actually hurt us, it helps them. So let's get that fight going. And if we look, when I mouse over here, shallow water gives speed of 80% to small units, which we are, and melee attack of 80% to small units. So basically we'll be only getting about 14 melee attack instead of 18. And the Skink Cohorts, when they're in water, I think they get a boost to their stats as well. So you can see they're winning handily pretty much right away when they're in water. So that aquatic buff is actually pretty solid, though I can't see it being easy to execute. So I don't know how valuable that trait is. Skink Cohorts seem to be underpowered compared to the other low tier infantry, with the except for us, except for the miners, that is. But yeah, they're definitely winning that battle handily. 3,000 out of 6,000, they still got about half health left, and away they go. So we'll take a look at what the stats ended up showing us in that battle. And if we go to, in the swamp, the Skink Cohorts won all 7 battles, and won them quite handily. You know, and you can see the DPS, the damage per second difference. Our miners in water were only hitting, we're only doing about 74% the damage, and the Skink Cohorts were doing almost 119% damage. So basically, a 55% swing in DPS by our miners having less melee attack and the skink cohorts having better stats in water. So it is pretty significant. You definitely wouldn't want to face up anything with aquatic or maybe strider in water when you're a dwarf, because it's pretty significant. But generally, most maps it's pretty easy to avoid water. So the next thing I wanted to do is look at miners fighting on a hill. Like how much does a hill advantage give us? So I copied down the Clan Rats battle where we lost all 7, and our approximate corrected value was 194 gold. And I went to, oh my, I'm not going to remember which map it is. I don't think. Well, I think it's just below Glacial Lake. Might have been High Pass. And we grabbed the Skaven and Clan Rats. Right there. There we go. And let's start that fight. Hey, I was just curious of how much value fighting off a hill has, and I wanted to see if we could actually take out some Clan Rats if we started on a hill. So let's just go start over there, start the battle, get fighting. So this is about the best hill I could find. I mean, I don't know if the hill advantage is better for steeper hills or like if it's graded. So if you have a shallow hill, you get only so many stats. If it's a really steep hill, you get better stats. I'm not entirely sure exactly how it works, but I thought I would see what the difference was fighting Clan Rats with a hill advantage. So we'll go down and fight them and see if we can take them out. So right away we don't have a green cross sword, so we're clearly not winning, and now they do have the green cross swords, so they're winning this fight. And the Clan Rats still have their strength in numbers buff, which is actually a pretty significant buff. Like +8 melee defense is pretty huge, to be truthful. And they have +8 melee defense, +6 melee attack, +4 weapon strength, and +4 charge bonus. So right now it looks like the Clan Rats are still going to win, even though we have a pretty massive hill advantage. But we should see a difference in the stats, and that's kind of what I'm looking for when I did this test, is how much value does that hill have when we make use of it. And that's not for testing miners, that's just out of curiosity for testing everything, so you can kind of consider it sort of a bonus test or a bonus set. You see our miners are getting stuck there. I don't know why that is. There we go, just re-engage them all, and it looks like we're going to lose that fight. But it's very close. Definitely could have won that one. And we lost. Okay, so we'll end that battle. Very close with a hill advantage over a unit that we had really struggled with last time. So let's see what it ended up being. So when I ran the test 7 times, I actually won 5 out of 7. You could see while on a hill, basically at a 30% increase in my DPS, damage per second, and a 30% decrease in theirs. So it's almost, fighting down a hill is almost equivalent to the aquatic trait in skinks fighting units that have an aquatic debuff. So that's a pretty big deal. You can see this is 120% and 75 basically, and this is 130 and 72. So it's more valuable than that. But interestingly enough, the Clan Rats still pulled value on us. They still got 21 gold off us, and in the first battle the miners would have only been worth 194 gold. In the second one the miners are worth 304, so we did gain 110 gold on that, which is pretty significant. So just like an interesting little tidbit. So fighting on a hill, if you can find one, even in you know, sometimes you can't always deploy on a hill or fight on a hill, but if you can work it out so that during the battle you get a hill advantage for any amount of time, really big deal, and quite valuable actually. So The next unit I wanted to test against, I said, well, miners are really a very unique unit, high armor, armor piercing, the cheapest unit in the game that does that. You know, they don't perform well against other cheap units. Perhaps if we find a situation where we can fight a unit that is really quite strong, like a Chaos Warrior, they're valued at 750. They don't have armor piercing damage, and they have lots of armor, 100 armor. If the miners are going to pull value anywhere, it's going to be against these Chaos Warriors. So I wanted to go and pick that fight. So we'll just go to Glacial Lake, make sure we got that going right. So let's see how our miners do against these Chaos Warriors. Let's see if we can pull a little value. This is really, if there's anywhere where we're going to pull value, this is the situation. Fighting something with high armor and no armor piercing, so we maximize our own armor. So let's get that battle going here. Alright. Well, it doesn't look good. But we can lose this and still pull value on these Chaos Warriors. That's the big thing. So the Chaos Warriors are kicking the tar out of us, as they should, I suppose. They got 26 extra melee defense, 18 extra melee attack, but they do have 20 more armor. But this is where we should pull some value, if we're gonna pull value anywhere, is having an armor piercing unit fight a unit with a lot of armor that has no armor piercing itself. So lost that pretty handily. Let's just go take a look at the stats. So I fought that 7 times like the others because I wanted to see really, could we actually pull value in that situation? And the answer is actually no. Of course we lost all 7. We expected that. But the goal differential was still really high. When fighting a unit that our miners should be optimized against, an armor piercing unit against a high armor unit that doesn't do armor piercing itself, if there's going to be an area where we pull value, that's it. But our miners don't. We 128 gold, so the miners' approximate corrected value is 197 again in this situation, which is pretty bad actually, because this is exactly where the miners should do their very best. I would expect an armor piercing unit to be able to pull a little value out of that, even if they're a lower tier. So I wanted to continue on and look at maybe there's other areas where our miners can get value. So I went and grabbed the High Elves. Whoops. And I got Tyrion. Where is he? Tyrion. And just let me get his abilities off. So Tyrion with no abilities is worth 1400. And the thing about Tyrion is he's a duelist, so he doesn't have a ton of splash damage, melee expert, armored. He has the highest armor I could find, some of the highest armor I could find, 125, and melee defense of 60. But he will have that martial prowess, so plus 12 melee defense. But if we're going to be able to pull value off of anyone, typically infantry units can outvalue heroic units in general. So this will be about the best case scenario, 125 armor against Tyrion. So let's go see how we do in that fight. See if we can actually dig a little value out of it. And again, this is not really a fight I would expect to ever win, but if there's one area where miners, and I don't mean just a unit of miners, but if you use miners with blasting charges and use up all their blasting charges, where do you use them? Well, embedding them with your hero, where your hero and a group of miners are fighting someone like Tyrion or a heavily armored hero, could do very well because they can bog them down and hurt them, but they're really doing extremely little damage to Tyrion, and he is just kicking the tar out of them. I mean, we expect them to beat him, but would have expected a little bit more damage out of that. He's got Tyrion 2800 health left there. 2790. So yeah, Tyrion beats him up pretty easily, but let's go take a look at when you run it 7 times, can we pull value out of that fight? And the answer is sometimes. So when you are able to get a few shots in on Tyrion, I had three battles where I pulled positive value. Only 4 gold here, but 84 gold in this one and 6 gold. Netted only minus 20 gold, which would give our miners an approximate value of 305 in this position. So I thought maybe Tyrion's melee defense was a little too high because we had only been hitting at 10%. So I wanted to give it another go against Grimgor Ironhide. Because the one thing about Grimgor is he has very low melee defense. So just wanted to run this battle again against Grimgor. And yeah, his melee defense is only 35. So we're actually going to hit him a lot more, and he's worth 1350. So this is another area where I thought our miners could pull some strong value, or potentially strong value, was against Grimgor Ironhide. And Tyrion you'd expect to see on horse. You will see Grimgor on foot, this is actually a much more likely encounter where you could get miners on Grimgor. So this is another possibility. Again, Grimgor just does a ton of damage because he is armor piercing as well, and they're not doing a whole lot of damage to him in return, and he routs them really fast. So, so kill them all. Soulhammer and I are trying to get together for another 2v2. Okay, so so what did the data say? We get that together. Well, again, we had only one battle where we actually pulled value against Grimgor, and the miners were even worse against Grimgor. It's probably because he had that armor piercing, and he's not a duelist. I don't think he's a duelist, but our value was only 262. Like, they really, he really kicked the snot out of my miners. And let me see, what do his stats say? Yeah, he's not a duelist, so he has a little more splash damage and has a ton of weapon strength. So there it is. I mean, that's the battery of testing. We're going to go over a few more things here, but you know, when I go back to this spreadsheet, you know, the miners values 262, 305, 197, 304, 194, 202, 291, 282, 250, 227, 184, 218, 223, 249, and 201 and 194, and 236. Really, what this is showing me is that these miners are really, in the current state they are performing very, very poorly, and they're definitely not worth 325 gold. If I had to put it, I'd say right now they're performing at about a value of 225 gold. But really, going back to the beginning of the episode, Dowie infantry has to outperform other infantry head to head, because the dwarfs don't have healing, they don't have magic, they don't have the Wa, they don't have faction-wide buffs or faction-wide heals or all these things. So really, dwarf infantry and dwarf units in general have to outperform their counterparts when just in a simple one-on-one with no support. And so I don't even think they're worth 225. Maybe they'd be worth 200 gold in the current state they're in. Kind of in there is where I would put them. So what to do? Well, you know, in my first video I suggested I'd love to see miners have an ability like they do in the tabletop. In the tabletop, you can basically place them anywhere on the tabletop, and they start underground. It takes them 3 turns to get out. But I'd love to see miners so you can deploy them starting underground, and they could come out of the ground just like Skaven do, or how summons do. Something like that would be extremely good, and I think would be really fun. It would give the Dowie a ton of play and a very interesting unit, and something that'd be worthwhile bringing. But there's other things I think that are needed to tweak the miner. Even if they got that ability, I don't know if they'd be worth 325, because you look at things like night goblins, for example. They're worth 400, and they have a silver shield. They do poison damage. They have stock, and believe me, these night goblins absolutely beat the brakes off of miners. So I think what they also need is a different stat distribution, no matter what changes would happen. 18 melee attack and 18 melee defense doesn't make sense for the unit as it's used, and this charge bonus is very low. The weapon strength is okay where it's at. 17 armor piercing and 5 weapon damage is not bad, but their stats need to be changed. What I would suggest, I think, first of all, we just go back to them being worth 200 gold as they are. A redistribution of stats, meaning I think they should have much higher melee attack and lower melee defense. You know, they're a miner. They might not necessarily be able to defend themselves very well, but they sure can put a pick where they want it to go. So you would think their melee attack would be higher and their melee defense would be lower. So I would definitely consider just redistributing these stats, taking their melee defense down to 10 from 18 and adding those 8 to melee attack and bringing them up to 26. The other thing they really need is a much better charge bonus. Their charge bonus is only 6. So if we look at a Dwarf Warrior charge bonus is 18. You know, even look at these guys, charge bonus 12. Goblins, charge bonus 8. You know, maybe look at a Beastman where the spears charge bonus 10. Ungor Herd charge bonus 15. You know, Gore Herd with shields 22. I think that aside from a redistribution of stats to 26 melee attack and 10 melee defense, I think their charge bonus should actually kind of be in that 14-15 range at least. Dwarf Warriors are 18, so maybe even 16. So the idea being that, yeah, they're not going to do very well, but if you charge them into something, especially a unit with high melee defense, they can at least get some work done, and you can get them going. The other things that would be possible would be to change their model count. If there is something that dwarfs have a lot of, it would be miners. Maybe you could change their model count from 75 to 90. I think that would be quite reasonable. Ultimately, what I'd like to see is them to stay at 325, have the ability to burrow underground with a stat redistribution, with a charge bonus of say 14, and actually maybe even an extra, 2 or 3 melee attack on top of the distribution, and then all of a sudden you have a unit that can outflank. You can deploy them underground. They can go after artillery. They can rear charge infantry engagements. They would be a unit that would be really fun to use, and again, iconic for the Dawi. So I think there's clearly enough evidence and statistics and numbers are backing this up that these miners are nowhere near worth 325. So I would definitely suggest you just don't bring them ever. There's just no good reason to bring miners. Now, miners with blasting charges, different ball of wax altogether. These blasting charges are quite powerful, and they're worth more than the 75 gold differential. I'd say those blasting charges are probably worth about 150 gold. I'll just show a quick battle here of the way that blasting charges have to be used. If you line up, we'll grab a unit of, let's grab Bretonia. So we know these men-at-arms here that are worth 250, they beat the brakes off our miners. Maybe we can even grab a more expensive unit. Bretonia. Sorry. Yeah, let's just grab a men-at-arms with shields, because we know they don't have a lot of armor. So these are same valued. When you put them into the battle, you really should never deploy your miners with blasting charges out front, ever. It turns out that if you do that, they actually don't perform very well. So I'll just put them out here, and they got their blasting charges, so we'll start the battle, and they'll get some blasting charges. They're going to do a ton of damage, but then they're not going to get all their charges off. So we'll just leave them fight here. They did a lot of damage to those men-at-arms. They took off a third of their health at least, but they didn't get all their blasting charges. So they're going to slowly throw them, and the battle's going to take some time. And these men-at-arms will actually, I've run this test and played around with this a little bit. These men-at-arms will actually come back and beat our miners with blasting charges. I guess if I can leave it so you can see this. for yourself. You know, they're way behind, but they're going to come back. I mean, not every time, but they do come back, and they can beat these miners with blasting charges even after eating their blasting charges. Oh, maybe they're going to lose this one. I don't know. They got 8-4. It's really, really close. If we want to show the correct... Oh, our miners are winning now, so they are going to win that. So we'll show the correct way to do that. We'll quit the battle, and we're going to rematch. And really, the way you want to use your miners with blasting charges is you always want to put them behind someone else. And this is why blasting charges aren't as valuable with iron breakers as you might think. So let's take our regular miners, and let's just spread them out just for fun, so we can demonstrate what I mean. And we'll put our miners with blasting charges right here, and maybe a little bit up, and we'll start the battle. And I'll grab these guys, I'll get their blasting charges in, send them in on the charge, and see, it's already over, just like that. And what you do after you've used your blasting charges, you know, you just take them here, you redeploy them, and you truly do use your miners as you don't want them on the front line fighting ever. You just use them as a true reserve unit. They can get in the way of other units and muck them up, you know, and if your lord needs to escape, you can run them through your miners, and you know, your miners can get in the way of an enemy lord that's trying to kill your own lord. Really, you're okay after you use your blasting charges. You've got the value out of it, just to let them sit in the back line, maybe be extra defense for your ranged units or anything else, but do not throw them into a fight, because they just don't have the stats to be useful. But those blasting charges, clearly, major impact. I mean, our regular miners took no damage whatsoever, and these guys got 1 kill. So, and these guys got 8 kills on the charge. So, pretty significant. And that's really the way you use those miners with blasting charges. So the other areas where you can use your miners, so you got to think, blasting charges are powerful enough that miners with blasting charges are going to be useful in some competitive builds, depending on the faction you're facing. So how do you optimize your use of miners after they've done their blasting charges? Again, don't put them into the fight. Leave them into your back line, and if some of your line starts to break down, then you can put them in as to support that part of your line. They can help stop cav or monsters or muck them up so your lord can get away. And miners with a lord actually do pretty well. So let me just grab just our basic. Where's our basic lord? Okay, no stats and abilities, and we'll go here. We'll grab Grimgor again. Grimgor's a beast, so he'll probably beat both these guys up. Actually, let's grab Grimgor. Grimgor is about as awesome as they come for beating up dwarf lords. Unfortunately, he's really good. So our lord has no abilities, nor does Grimgor. We have 1325 gold here. He has 1350. So basically, one of the areas where miners can actually have an impact is fighting in with your lord, because they can take charges and they can allow your lord to kind of move around. So we're just going to put our lord here, kind of in that fight. We'll start the battle, and I'm just going to group these guys up and get them fighting. So remember, Grimgor absolutely beat the brakes off our miners, and we did hardly any damage to him last time. But you can see he can't quite move around, and our lord's going to hit him in the back, our miners are going to hit him in the back, and it does become much more difficult. And you can see we're taking a lot of health off him. Our lord hasn't even taken any damage yet. Oh, there he gets his first hit. But we're doing okay. And this is how you would use those miners after they've got rid of their blasting charges. Keep them with your lord. Use them in areas where they can actually be useful. And here, I think we're going to beat Grimgor pretty handily with just our regular lord. And it's against the AI, a player would be a little more focused on your lord, but you can see that's quite... the miners can have quite an impact there. Because if I just put my lord up against Grimgor, so let's just... I'll just rematch, and just to show you, I'll just put my lord up against Grimgor. He will kick the tar out of my lord. like it kicked the crap out of him. Grimgors are pretty good fighting one-on-one, so we put him up here, and let's start that battle. And just out of curiosity, so you can see, we saw Grimgor kick the tar out of miners, and we saw him kick the tar. Now we're going to see him kick the tar out of a lord, and you can see he's just eating him up, crushing him. You know, so this is the one combo where we can have some value. I mean, our lord's getting a few hits in, but boy, he's not going to get Grimgor even to half health before he's beat up. And yeah, Grimgor, we'll just watch. Grimgor will go beat up our miners now too, separately. So this is kind of the one area to use your miners with blasting charges after they've got their blasting charges up, to kind of help fight a lord, that sort of thing. And yeah, they're not even though Grimgor is very tired, they're still going to have trouble getting hits on them, and there they go. So put them together though, and it's actually a pretty good combo. Mind you, this doesn't make miners super special, because you put anything with a lord and that'll help them out, but the miners can get better hits in because they do have that armor piercing damage. So that's the video, and that's the analysis. To really summarize, based on the analysis that we did, the miner is definitely nowhere worth 325 gold. Even though that's low, they get snot kicked out of them by everyone. Even units they should get good against, like units that have high armor and no armor piercing damage, they can't even pull value against them. And even units like Skaven slaves pull value against our miners. This 80 armor is really not as strong as you would think it is. You know, it really doesn't make the difference. It just doesn't make as much difference as you'd think. So in that, I think their value is around between 225 and 250 straight up. If you look at the analysis we did, I'd say closer to 225, knowing that the dwarf infantry must be better than any infantry it faces head to head, just in an isolated situation. That probably puts their actual value in our army down to about 200 gold. So my suggestion is to give them the tabletop treatment. Let them mine. Let them be the iconic unit for the dwarfs, like miners should be. Because it'd be really neat and fun to use. Stick in a couple miners in your army so you can get some rear charges in here, and let them bury and tunnel underground and come up from underneath the ground in the middle of the battlefield. Would be amazing fun. Barring that, stat changes, I really think they should have a stat redistribution for their melee attack and melee defense. They're both 18 right now. Really, miners shouldn't have great melee defense, but they can hit what they're aiming at with their picks for sure. So you make their melee defense 10 and their melee attack 26. I think you got something. I also think you really need to make their charge bonus something like 15, 14 up there, so at least they can have a little impact when they charge. Other alternatives are to make their unit size bigger from 75 to 90, though I don't think that would be what I would ultimately want, but it might work. So there are ways to make miners a little bit more useful. I would like to see them be something that are useful in more competitive builds. And for absolute certain, if you're building an army for online play, don't bring miners. It's just, maybe there's a way to make them useful. Miners with blasting charges, different story. Those blasting charges are powerful, as we've seen, but just don't bring miners. You'll be better to change your build out a little bit, exchange a dwarf warrior for a long beard and a couple of chevrons, upgrade from, a cannon to an organ gun, or a long beard with great weapons to a hammer. That's where your gold should be, will actually be better spent in your army builds. I just can't ever see it being useful to spend 325 gold on a miner unit, so definitely don't do it. So that's the video. I'd love to hear any comments anyone has on that analysis, on really my presupposition that the miners have to be more powerful pound for pound in their tier, because dwarfs don't have cavalry, aren't mobile, don't have monsters, really have a difficult time flanking don't have magic, don't have faction buffs like martial prowess, or you know, they don't have the Wa, they don't have all these things. So the basic dwarf unit has to be in and of itself quite powerful. So we really need to see dwarfs at all levels outperform their counterparts at least by a little bit, and I would definitely love to see the proper treatment given to miners so they can be the iconic dwarf unit they should be. So comments down below. I'd love to hear from you. Everyone watches my channels knows I love comments. I love comments and I love discussion. And you guys, like, some people leave some really good comments and really interesting breakdowns of ideas, and I find those so fun to read. So I definitely encourage you to leave some of your own. And with that said, that's it. So hope you found it interesting, and we'll see you soon.